mother was from a small town in Alabama called Notasulga, Alabama. It's near Auburn and Tuskegee. And she actually came to Atlanta to work at the old Macy's in downtown Atlanta. She lived on Boulevard when Boulevard was a nice area of town in one of the apartments there. And she had relatives that lived here in Acworth who worked with Mills Lumber Company. And my dad was from Woodstock. His name was Andrew Flanagan. And he drove a truck for Mills Lumber. And so on weekends and such, my mother would come up from Atlanta to visit with relatives in Acworth. And my dad, of course, was driving the truck for the Mills Lumber Company. And they started seeing each other and started dating and decided to get married, and so they did. And then I came along in May of 1950. After we moved from Fowler Circle, we moved to Northside Drive, and that was pre-elementary school. And then from there we moved to Dallas Street, and the house that was in the curve between the current City Hall and the elementary school. We lived there for probably 16, 18 years. And I went to the beach, obviously, and I have recollections of riding the train and the slides and such at the small amusement park that was there. But just never had that much of an affinity for water. And so so we would go to the beach, of course, and we would play and splash around in the water, but it was not something that was a priority for me. I'd rather play football and softball and baseball over on the school playground with friends and buddies, and that way too, my mom could keep an eye on us out the back kitchen window or off the back porch, and she couldn't do that when we were at the beach. The Durham brothers, of course, started it in 1895. Dr. Lacey came here in the mid-40s from Fairmount, and then Larry and Ray purchased the pharmacy from him, I believe it was 1965. And then Ray left in 74, but Ray is still here in Acworth too, so he comes into the pharmacy quite often, so that's we enjoy seeing him. But I started there in June of 1966. I got a phone call from Ray Dalrymple, who was one of the pharmacists there at that time, and Ray asked me if I would like to come up and talk with them about being their stock boy. And I went up and I interviewed with Ray and with Larry Braden and met Dr. Lacey at that time. Mm-hmm. And I took the job with them, worked for a week, and then of course it was time for my dad's vacation. Mm-hmm. So we left for 2 weeks and then came back and started to work again. I worked there as a stock boy all through high school. I worked there while I was at Kennesaw Junior College. I worked there while I was in pharmacy school. And then got my pharmacy license, and there was not a position for me at that time. And so I left there and went to work at Atherton Drugs and came back in July of 1974, and I've been there ever since. Our survival has actually been perpetuated by the fact that other pharmacies send patients to us. There's not a day goes by that we don't have 2 or 3 pharmacies call us and say, can you help this patient? Or we don't have this medication. And of course, most of the time those patients become regular patients of Lacey's. When Cumberland Mall and Town Center Mall opened, the smaller businesses that were here had a very difficult time. Some went under quickly, others died slowly. We had, of course, those owners that were long-time owners held on longer than the newer owners. And so that's when actually Hearth came about, was to try and create an atmosphere and an environment here locally to maintain those businesses. There were places like Eaton's Department Store, and there were places like Acworth Variety Store and Allen's 5 and 10, and those types of places. So, you know, we suddenly found ourselves with vacant buildings, and Hearth's purpose, of course, and soon to be the Acworth Downtown Development Authority, was to help to make sure that those buildings were occupied with very viable businesses. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we didn't get viable businesses. We got businesses that were gone in a short period of time. But a lot of people saw the potential here, and they invested their own funds, their own money, into renovation of buildings, and had some connections with people that were interested in starting businesses or moving businesses here. One of the goals that we had, of course, was for downtown Acworth to maintain its small town charm and environment, and I think we've been very successful with that. And by doing that, of course, that's an attraction that people like to come to. They remember the small town that they grew up in, and they're able to relate to that, and they like coming to Henry's, and they like coming to Fusco's, and they like coming to the antique shops that we have here in town, and the gift shops, and they love coming to Lacey's, because when they walk into Lacey's, it's a small town environment. Majority of time we call people by their name when they walk in. We don't even have to ask them which medication they want, because we know. So it's been able to maintain its small town charm and atmosphere.